A dangerous beauty of the battlefield, she infects her foes with contagious charm. She corrodes the well-being of entire nations with her acidic nature. She's elusive. She's vain. Hey there, good-looking. Are you single? She's toxic. She's a role model to social justice warriors everywhere. Today we are looking at the Saryn Warframe. Saryn is a debuff Warframe with a toxin theme that is represented in her damage over time approach to combat. Although she doesn't deal nearly as much damage as say in Excalibur or Valkyr, Saryn does make foes die quicker with the use of the viral status, which is complemented by her passive to make status effects she inflicts last much longer. Saryn also has a primed variant which features an increase to both her armor and power stats. You can pick up Saryn's blueprint in the market, however her parts drop off the Kayla to Tame boss which can be found on Sedna. If Saryn Prime tickles your fancy, you can find her blueprint in Tower 3 and Tower 4 Exterminate, her helmet in Tower 1 Mobile Defense, her chassis in Tower 3 Survival Sea Rotation, and her systems in Tower 2 Exterminate. Saryn's first ability is Spore, which is affected by duration, range, and strength. 3 pustules will form on an infected target, dealing some damage over time. When one of the pustules is popped by a weapon, it will deal some AoE damage that will then apply spores to all enemies in the affected area. Enemies affected by Spore will have the viral status effect proc on them. Viral is an effect that halves the HP of the affected target for a period of time. So for example, if you were to apply viral on an enemy with 2 million health, with the viral proc you would have just removed 1 million of that health, at least for a period of time. Meaning that Saryn is capable of making enemies die faster, which will help push the team even further into endless mission types by reducing the amount of damage required to take out enemies quickly. So when playing this Warframe, the focus is how fast something dies instead of how much damage you are able to dish out. Saryn's second ability is Molt. Saryn leaves a clone of herself behind that draws enemy fire and cleanses Saryn of any negative status effects. The ability is affected by range, strength, and duration. When the clone expires, whether it be from running out of time or having 0 health, the clone will explode and deal damage to surrounding enemies while applying the toxic proc. Saryn can actually cast spores on her Molt, allowing them to spread to enemies that attack the spores. When spored enemies have their pustules popped, the toxic damage increases the AoE damage of the popping pustule. This will also spread the toxic status effect to nearby enemies in addition to the spores and viral status. The third ability in Saryn's kit is Toxic Lash. Toxic Lash applies a bonus of toxic damage to Saryn's melee weapon, which is affected by duration and strength. It also reduces the amount of damage Saryn receives while blocking when the ability is activated. When you attack an enemy with the melee weapon, a toxic proc will be applied to the target and guarantees that one of the pustules from Spore will be popped, which will also restore 2 points of energy per popped pustule, which means you can get a whopping total of 6 energy from a single target. Now if you're popping the spores of multiple targets, this will reapply the spores to enemies in the area, so in theory the energy gain would work best against crowds. Miasma is Saryn's ultimate ability, where she deals corrosive damage to all enemies within range of her. This ability is affected by duration, range, and strength. Enemies will be staggered by the initial damage of the ability, which can be used for a getaway or a window of opportunity. Enemies will continue to take damage for a period of time depending on how much duration the ability has. The ability actually deals more damage to enemies affected by viral and toxin procs, making this more of a finisher move or a way of dealing extra damage to enemies to help out the team. Miasma will also deal more damage if cast within range of Molt. The less health Molt has, the more damage Miasma will deal. Just don't expect enemies to die instantly. Now, keep in mind that I have completed the second dream quest, so I'm taking advantage of the benefits from that quest. So for those of you who have completed this quest, you'll get an idea of what I'm doing very quickly. Those who haven't, I won't go into details to avoid spoilers, but for those who haven't, focus on energy efficiency more because she's going to need it. I'm able to get away with this due to the fact that I have progressed past the second dream. Now, the stats I mainly focus on are duration, range, and strength in order to push the damage as much as possible, but at the same time, at later levels, I'm very well aware that the damage is going to fall off, so the Spore viral procs are going to be where it's at. I use Primed Flow in order to increase her energy reserve, in order to stockpile on the amount of energy that she has, and just use that as basically a reservoir for energy. I have Rejuvenation in order to heal over time. I may swap that out for Energy Siphon at later time. It's a bit undecided, but it will build off of Primed Flow if I use Energy Siphon, so that's still an option for me that I'm considering. I have Stretch in order to increase the range, which affects the Spore as previously discussed. Blind Rage, which will come at the cost of some power efficiency, but will further boost the damage output and health of the molt. Intensify to further increase power strength. Streamline for power efficiency. Primed Continuity in order to increase the duration of all of her abilities, which is very important. Then I have Constitution to even further increase the duration. The Knockdown Recovery, I don't really give a shit about. She really shouldn't be in melee range to begin with, even though she has Toxic Lash, due to the many flaws regarding that type of damage reduction. And then lastly, I have Vitality to give her some survivability, which is definitely a concern. Now, I do not have the Exilis slot unlocked, unfortunately, but if I did have it unlocked, I will use the Rush mod in order to increase the sprint speed so that I'm able to get around quicker and avoid damage, because I'm of the opinion that avoiding damage is going to be much more effective than healing it off. So for some people, you can use Regenerative Molt. Regenerative Molt is also an alternative. You can use that if you don't want to use Rejuvenation. I may not even use Rejuvenation, but if you're having trouble keeping her alive, Regenerative Molt, the augment, is going to be a huge benefit for her, so that is an option if you need a little bit of extra help in keeping her alive. So, what are my personal thoughts on Saryn? I think she is fun, but she is definitely flawed. Damage abilities do not scale all that well in Warframe unless it's doing an absurd amount of damage, like the Exalted Blade weapons, say Hysteria Claws for example. So Viral is Saryn's main asset to the team. Her survivability is barely there at higher levels. Her molt will die very quickly, which makes it difficult to use both defensively and offensively due to the fact that it will die almost instantly if you're doing those higher level sortie missions. The problem I have with blocking is that the damage will still add up at higher levels, and if you try to parry it, it can sap you of your energy, and you have to be wielding a melee weapon, meaning that if you want to attack, you have to be close to enemies at point blank range, where Saryn's only other source of defense is coming from the stagger caused by the initial damage of Miasma. Because of this, it can be difficult to find a leg to stand on as Saryn. So you may want to help compensate for this by using Shade Sentinels or Huraskuros. You can even try taking advantage of status weapons such as the Staticore to spread radiation. Despite all this doom and gloom, I actually like Saryn because she's in the spot where she doesn't just trivialize everything and has an aspect of her that scales, and I also find her Spore mechanic engaging and fun, but I know not to push her too hard without a team to back her up because she will need it, or she will begin to buckle under all the pressure. So if you're still unsure about Saryn, at least give her a try. Keep in mind not to rely too much on Miasma to kill everything for you, and see if she's the right fit for your playstyle. And if she is, you too can wield the power of social justice. I mean poison. Because those two things are completely different. No confusion there whatsoever. God, come on. It's like I could actually confuse the two. I know what I'm talking about. Excuse me, sir? I've slaughtered thousands of your kind, show absolutely no remorse for it, and now I have to take responsibility, but I don't want to. Can you point me to the nearest college campus? Oppression!